you very much. All right. Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where in the world you are. If you're in Europe, it's very likely afternoon. I hope you've been having an incredible day so far. I am so excited to share a little bit of what I've learned, not just in the last 7 years of speaking, but also in the last couple of weeks of talking to other developers. But spoilers. Um, so if you'd like to follow along on your device, I've put up my slides for downloads. You'll see the link at the top of the current slide. I'm going to read it out. https:// my first name, Ramon, h.dev slash nervous dash about dash speaking dot pdf. Just going to take a moment. All right. Well, hello. My name is Ramon. Don't worry about rolling the R. Ramon is just fine. I am so excited to talk to you about this. And yes, quite nervous. My pronouns are he, him, as Sue's very kindly described me. I've been consulting and doing developer advocacy for a while now, the latter being a lot newer for me. So I'm quite excited. And I would like to start this talk with the last thing I'm going to tell you today, which you've already heard from Nathaniel, and I promise I did not steal it. It's this. The audience wants you to succeed. If you've been to conferences, you've purchased your ticket, or your company's bought you a ticket, or you've been invited, you know that you want the speaker to do well. You want to learn something. Nobody's ever, very few people are wishing for someone to fail on stage. However, we get nervous. And what I'm here to tell you today is that it's fairly common. I'm going to read you a quote from the Anxiety and Depression Association of America. It goes like this. The fear of public speaking or performance, often called stage fright, exacts a huge toll on our self-confidence and self-esteem and causes some people to leave school or a job or pass up a promotion. It continues. Many, including seasoned professional performers, suffer in silent terror. And because they feel embarrassed, people try to keep their fear a secret, even from a spouse or other close family members or friends. Now, this second part here, that seasoned professional performers also suffer from stage fright, really stood out to me because I kind of had the impression going into public speaking that after a while it just goes away. And the truth is, your mileage may vary. Here's some of the physical effects that take place when you're on stage, very commonly associated with fight or flight response. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is released. Adrenaline is released into the body, and this has a number of effects on the body. Heart rate increase, bladder relaxation, tunnel vision, shaking, dilated pupils, flushed face, dry mouth, slowed digestion, and hearing loss. Now, I'm going to start up right away with a question you're probably asking yourself, or asking me. Ramon, if you're nervous of giving talks, aren't you nervous right now? And I'm going to tell you right away, yeah, I'm very nervous. And in ways you might not notice. For example, my mouth right now is very dry. I've also spent the last, I want to say, hour pacing around my very small flat. I've gotten my steps in for today, let's say. And other things. I'm maybe shaking a little bit, but here's what's important. I'm not alone. And not just that, I think it's very important to preface and say, this is my experience and others' experience, but my experience in particular, as a white cis man, I carry a lot of privilege and will have a different experience. That said, I took to Twitter. Now, I've been very fortunate over the last 7 years, 10 years of my career, to have built up a network of not just fellow colleagues or other wonderful people around me, but also lots of tech speakers. And some of these are very experienced, some of these are less so. So I took to Twitter and I asked a question. Dear speaker friends, new and experienced, I would love to hear from you. I'm preparing a small something on my talk nerves. Do you get nervous? And if so, when, relative to the talk? How do you handle it? No stress if you're uncomfortable sharing. Please feel free to DM, to direct message and retweet. Thank you. At the bottom of this slide, you'll see a link to this. And maybe after this talk, I would recommend going to this because the responses are quite extraordinary. And speaking of extraordinary responses, what was also extraordinary was the fact that I got 54 replies. What you see on this slide here is the number of replies zoomed in on my tweet. Now, I'm going to share you some of these insights with a couple of notes. First off, I checked every single tweet that I share here. I either DM'd the person who tweeted it to ask them, may I please share this today? Or they explicitly said so in their reply to me. So please rest assured, this is all shared with consent. And that said, I'll start with my experience. I'm going to read my tweet. I'll share too. I get extremely nervous during the 15 to 30 minutes leading up to my turn. Talking to folks about anything else, watching the talk before mine if there is one, turning off notifications, and not looking at social media except to share slides helps. Let's read some more. Jane writes, yes, every time. It comes in phases. About 2 weeks till the day before, she asks herself, why did I do this? I don't even know what I'm going to talk about yet. On the day, she'll say, super excited, finally. An hour before, this is gonna suck, I can't do this. And then on stage, hey, look, smiling people, all's good again. This roller coaster, by the way, is something I can relate with very much. Tierney writes, always, ramping up logarithmically, so very quickly, for about 24 hours before it starts. How much depends on the amount of practice I was able to get in. Over time, it's gone from hitting peak, and as I'm walking on stage and just sustaining throughout the talk, to hitting peak as I'm walking on stage and then leveling out. Laura writes, I usually get nervous right before my talk. If I haven't prepared properly, it will mean that it turns into rambling, even something as simple as an introduction of myself. So I tend to over-prepare, write my talk ahead of time, and practice a lot to make sure the timing is good. Dawn writes, I get nervous starting a couple hours before, and it builds as the time gets closer until I'm pretty sure I'm unbearable. I can relate with this very much. Finally, Jen writes, this is my heart rate before and during my talk at ReactConf 2019. What she shares here is a screenshot from her watch. I'm presuming it's her Apple Watch. I don't have one, so I don't know. And it shows average heart rate of 131 beats per minute. Now, I'm going to look at mine real quick. I don't have an Apple Watch, but I've got a heart rate monitor. 86 beats per minute. And I think that's a little higher. I think my resting heart rate is 60. So mine's elevated. That's pretty elevated. But there's a couple of trends you might have noticed. A lot of people do tend to get a little bit nervous leading up to their talk. And not just that, but the level of nervousness can totally vary. And of course, it depends on the situation. For example, let's look at what the speaking engagement is going to look like. Numerous times today, some folks like Jessica have said, try out speaking at a meetup. That could make things a little easier. So looking at the type of event and saying, well, what kind of talk am I giving? Where am I giving it? Another thing that's been brought up a couple of times today is this a talk that I've given before? And I feel not only do I agree with everybody who said it, it is totally fine to give a talk that you've given before. And if anything, a lot of times it tends to improve every time you give it. Of course, keeping within saturation point. Another factor that affects this for me is how many people are in the audience. Personally, I haven't figured this out. Personally, I haven't figured this one out for myself yet. If it's a large audience, I kind of feel like it's just a blur of faces, whereas in a smaller audience, I've already built up a relationship with a lot of these people during the day, so it can be tricky to figure out what works for me. Another factor that helps me stay calm is whether there's someone I know in the audience right now. Sometimes if there's a friend or someone I've been chatting to throughout the day at the conference and kind of built up a friendship as the day has gone on, that kind of helps to help me stay calm. Having a friendly face there helps me stay grounded, you know? Furthermore, this has sometimes terrified me. Is there an audience member qualified in the topic, present at your talk? I'm sure a lot of you have thought to yourselves, oh, I can't give a talk on this topic. What if I don't know, let's talk about JavaScript frameworks. What if the creator of React.js is there? Or what if the creator of Vue.js is there and I give a terrible talk about it and I'm so uninformed? Let me tell you right away about this last one. If there's a topic that I really enjoy or that I'm very passionate about, seeing someone go up on stage and give their perspective on that topic is extremely exciting for me. And I'm sure it's the same for you. And numerous experts on topics have told me seeing a unique perspective on that topic is really exciting and something definitely worth attending. Amr wrote, I'm still trying to recognize a pattern, but I still can't capture it well. Sometimes I guess it has to do with how well I slept the day before and how tired I am. This is absolutely true. Definitely something I wish I followed people's advice on more. Getting plenty of sleep the night before is so tricky because on the one hand, you're pretty excited and nervous, but on the other hand, getting lots of rest helps you stay composed on stage. Furthermore, he writes, also depends on whether it's a community I'm familiar with. A talk that I gave before the first time, like I said before, giving a talk you've given before really helps you stay grounded. Luke writes, I have a few years and a few conferences under my belt, and the nerves depend on how many times I've given the talk. Definitely less nervous at a meetup though. I usually don't do anything to do with the talk on the day, so I don't stress about it. Oh, and a pre-talk bathroom break. Yep. Very, very common. I definitely in my time have had to run to the bathroom just before my talk. Furthermore, he writes, nerves don't stop me from enjoying eating breakfast like it does other people. So I usually get to take full advantage of the hotel breakfast. Moving on, Vaishali writes, I generally get nervous at 2 points. A night before the talk day and have to take some walks to calm my mind. Also, 20 to 30 minutes before my talk. I mostly listen to some acoustic music in a quiet place while thinking about my talk before entering the room. Also, over the years, I realized that sitting arrangements of an audience makes a lot of difference for me. For example, a theater and boardroom style sitting makes me more nervous, whereas a classroom style seating makes me less nervous, which I found interesting. I never thought of that before. I'm going to keep an eye on it more. Speaking of getting plenty of rest, Toby writes, why would I be tired? Well, I'm exactly the kind of person who tries to fall asleep, thinks about the talk, has an idea for a new great concept of slides, and then gets up and works on their slides until 4 a.m. Same for the new information coming up, like the MJIT benchmarks. These are just-in-time compilers for Ruby. Of course, at Rugby, the Ruby user group in Berlin, I'm so chill, I can impromptu give a talk without slides and don't be nervous. There are also many nice, known faces in the audience. I practically don't register it as nervousness oftentimes. Now, we've heard this a couple of times, but I really want to go back to this topic of when, relative to a talk, do people get nervous? Adrian writes, always. The 20 minutes leading up to my talk are the worst. This 20 to 30 minutes is proving to be pretty common. I take care of small things right before my talk. Things that, should I notice them during my talk, would throw me off. For example, chapstick for dry lips, tea with honey for no raspy voice, having a small pastry to quell the stomach rumbles. This last one resonated with me. My sister Pilar, who's also an incredible tech speaker and expert in DevOps and also studied biology, she said something that really makes me think a lot, which is the fact that instinctively humans from from their past felt their safest when they were eating something. So having a small bite to eat before going up on stage can help you feel a little safer. Moving on, Kaya writes, I get super nervous and usually spend half of the night before the talk going through my slides and changing them here and there. I also film myself giving the talk to an imaginary audience, so the worst cringe is already gone. This is an incredible tip, and I'm so trying that next time. Moving on, Jeremy writes, I get nervous within 10 minutes of going on. And then as I'm on stage, I just sort of leave my body and find myself back in the speaker lounge, like I teleported there or something. And this is something fairly common too. A lot of people, when they're on stage, it's kind of like you get into the zone after a few moments and you just give the talk. I'm a lot less nervous checking in on myself now. I'm a lot less nervous. The shakes have kind of stopped. So my mouth is still very dry. Excuse me for a second. Yeah, I definitely not shaking anymore. And my heart rate, 95. Huh, who knows? But I do feel a lot more calm. Peb writes, of course I do. Yes, I do. It's before and until the first 10 to 15 minutes of the talk. So far, I tried to cope with it with rehearsal with an audience, and between rehearsal and the delivery, I try to integrate the rehearsal experience by visualizing what will I do differently on the actual presentation. Hope that helps. This is an interesting one too. Personally, I cannot practice to friends and family. I find I get a lot more self-conscious if I'm practicing to friends and family. So if I'm practicing my talk, I'll kind of mumble it to myself at night. It varies from person to person. It is absolutely recommended, if you can, to practice to friends and family. Daniel Acid writes, it depends on the audience and topic, but I get nervous to a degree all the time. It starts a few hours before and kind of builds up. But that's just stage fright, and I accepted it as normal long ago. I also have this when doing public reading, for example, and it goes away when I'm in it. Nick wrote, I also find a weird nervousness about 8 to 12 minutes in, which is different. This is the only person who kind of told me that they got nervous into their talk as opposed to before it. I wonder, he writes, am I just saying words? Do my conclusions make any sense? Do I seem interested in this? Is this clicking? I then try to fix on a few people who make eye contact and smile. So what I'm getting at is it's a little different for everybody, right? And of course, a lot of this applies to giving talks on stage. However, a lot of it can also kind of be reused when giving talks online or pre-recording talks. But of course, this varies. Let's talk about leading up to the talk. So a couple of things that help me kind of not completely calm my nerves, but definitely relax a little bit. For example, it totally helps me to sneak an earlier peek at the venue. I like to arrive early, maybe the day before, and just be like, hey, is it okay if I go check out the venue early? Just to get a look at it, because I'm going to be there at my most vulnerable moment. So getting a bit of the lay of the land, so to speak, helps me. As I wrote in my earlier tweet, talking to folks about anything else is really helpful. Just kind of distracting myself from the fact that my flight or fight response is going to be on stage. Losing myself in the talk before mine also helps. But I remember the first time I ever gave a talk, which was at Concat 2015. I was so nervous, I had to go to my hotel room and cry. I was just like, I need to get all of this anxiety out. And then I was able to go on stage. And that's not uncommon. Another thing that helps me is to make sure that I've got all my resources ready to be able to give my talk. So for example, this presentation I'm showing to you now, it's on Google Slides. That helps me feel calm and know that if, say, my laptop gets broken, stolen, something at a conference, I'll know at least there is a backup that I can go for. Finally, Muting notifications really helps me. Not getting distracted by phone, like if my phone starts buzzing or something, it really throws me off. So I highly recommend turning off any kind of notifications you can. Let's see what other people have written. Leon, for example, says, yes, I still get nervous, also when doing online talks. Usually it starts about 30 to 60 minutes before. I do have a routine now where I go through my slides once more and then meditate for 5 to 10 minutes. This I find to be quite common, though I haven't tried it myself, and I'm going to definitely try it. Toby writes, it depends as always. Most common is the talk before my talk, so often I don't go. Although recently I usually go. And instead I go somewhere and chill and listen to music, usually punk rock or hardcore, etc. Going through parts of the talk in my head. Now, this is interesting because Vaishali previously mentioned listening to acoustic music, and Toby here listens to hard music, hard rock. So hardcore punk rock. And so knowing yourself and figuring out what works best for you, what's your, there's no standard for calming yourself down that you know better than your own. What's almost a must, writes Toby, is listening to one of my favorite songs right before the talk. Refused New Noise is a favorite here. Again, usually some rock with passion and a lot of energy. If I'm tired, I like to drink half a bottle of mate before. In case you're not familiar, mate is a caffeinated Argentinian tea drink that Uruguayan as well, that got quite popular in the German-speaking world as a carbonated cold drink. It's quite tasty. Laura writes, depending on the event and my mood, I will either distract myself with another talk, spend time with friends, good acquaintances, get some fresh air, or be alone to take deep breaths. Also, I need to go to the bathroom right before. LOL. Terrence wrote, I get super nervous when speaking, even after so many years. It's at the highest 30 minutes before my talk. A lot of it goes away once I start speaking on stage. At Tender Love gave me a pro tip of dressing up for my talks and having a ritual to help for calming my nerves. I've never tried dressing up before. I kind of want to try it out. I think it'd be fun. Emanuela wrote one of my favorite replies. Sorry, everyone else, I'm not playing favorites, but this one was really new and interesting for me. Being nervous means you care, and this is great. I used to get really nervous the morning of my talk, especially if I had time to tweak the presentation. P.S. I did that a lot today. I started to book a hairdress appointment just for styling. I'm relaxed and I feel great. I love it. Knowing by heart the first 2 to 5 minutes of the presentation really helps. This is why I usually use the intro to share a personal story, something that I know well and I'm comfortable sharing. After that, you have a connection with the audience, and it's easier. Now, what I loved about this is when I was asking Emanuela if I could share this with you today, she also said, oh, would you like to share a GIF? And I'm like, yeah, please. So she sent me this. What you see here is Emanuela at the hairdressers. The day of her talk, she posted this on her Twitter feed saying, hey, everyone, I'm going to be at the hairdressers today. I love this. This is such a good way to kind of force yourself out of that nervousness. Here's something from Julie as well. She writes, oh boy, do I get nervous. It increases slowly from the time I wake up. Rehearsing a lot is the most helpful thing. Also, wearing a shirt that doesn't show sweat marks, and then having a clean shirt to change into if I'm going to be spending time with people afterwards. That's really interesting, and I'm going to have to think about that next time I go and give a talk. Daniel writes, I learned that practicing helps me a lot, ideally with some feedback from friends and professionals. And there's a bunch of useful advice in Confessions of a Public Speaker. I followed up with Daniel and I asked him, this is a book which I've put above this slide, Confessions of a Public Speaker by Scott Berkun. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I haven't read that, but it sounds really interesting. Srishtika writes, 1 minute guided deep breathing exercise helps a lot. Also, actively stopping any thoughts about the content of the talk helps me too. Otherwise, I keep thinking if I remember it all, and it quickly goes into a loop of revising what's supposed to come after what, etc. Michelle writes, yes, definitely, especially in the 1 to 2 hours before. One thing that helps me is to massively focus on memorizing and delivering the beginning part of the talk and rehearse it, over and over again in my head. Over and over again in my head. I know that if I deliver a good beginning, I can get through the rest. Now let's talk about what happens during the talk. We've touched upon a couple of these before, but I really want to drive them home. Finding a few friendly faces smiling at me and occasionally speaking at them really helps. I learned at high school when doing presentations that I was supposed to look at the audience, which is a little bit difficult. However, if you find a couple of people that you kind of bounce around looking at, that are laughing at at my awful jokes, it's really important. It really helps me sort of stay that I'm addressing the audience. As a few people have also said, and I've mentioned today as well, after a few minutes, I'm kind of in the flow, and then I'm just relaxing a little bit more. And this last point, I think, helps me at least a lot. I don't know about the rest of you. I'd love to know what you think. When it comes to little quirks, I kind of feel like nobody notices them until I point them out. When you go up to someone and congratulate them on their talk and they say, oh, I was really nervous. And what's usually the follow-up to that is you saying, oh, wow, I did not notice. It's true. And not only that, everybody has their own little thing they notice that they do that probably nobody else notices. I noticed mine over the last 2 years, which I've made into a collage, which I'm going to share with you. And it's a bit of a collage of shame. This is me at different conferences between 2019 and 2020, messing around with my facial hair. It is a terrible habit, but you can see here I'm doing it all the time. It's so bad that in the photo in the bottom right, where I'm leaning on top of my laptop, you can hear it in the microphone. Nobody said anything, but I am very aware of it. So what I really want to get through is that mistakes and mishaps will happen, and folks will rarely notice or remember. I was giving a talk in January about working, collaborating, learning to code together online. And I was just on a slide where I was talking about problems with platforms like Zoom or Google Meet, where sometimes people get disconnected. During that sentence, I accidentally closed StreamYard, which is the platform for streaming my talk. So in the middle of it, I disappeared. In the lead up to this talk, Susan and I were talking, and I was telling her how much I loved her talk at You Got This on Your Couch. And she told me, I can't believe I was muted before I came on and gave the talk. When I came on, and I had honestly forgotten. It's just something that really she noticed about herself, or I noticed, that I'm going to punish myself for this tiny mistake. And and I think it's very important to remember this fear of making mistakes, depending on the severity of the mistake. Say if you inadvertently break the code of conduct or something, it is absolutely important that you own up to it, learn from your mistake, trying kind of doubling down and just doubling down and just saying, or giving what's called a faux apology. That doesn't really help, and you don't learn from it. So let's look at some other responses that people have given. Silvia says, anyway, while prep is important, the main thing for me is to know that I like what I'm talking about, and the message I'm conveying is mine. To expand, these are my words and my opinions about the subject matter, and I'd love for everybody for everyone to feel as excited about it as I do. To cope, I make sure that I have something to fidget with that isn't distracting to the audience. No endless clicking of pens or pieces of paper that shake because of the nerves. Monitoring my breathing and talking speed, as well as taking sips of water during the talk, also helps with slowing and calming down. Laura writes, during the talk, I learned not to fidget, but instead drink water. I actually write this in my presentation notes in big caps lock. Drink water. It's super helpful. I time it during moments where I think the audience may need to think a bit or take photos of the slides for social media. Wink, wink. You know, and I've noticed that a couple other speakers do this too. I kind of gave it the name like mic drop drink water moments. It's not a great name. Anyway, Toby writes, during the talk, it really helps me to find that one person who looks at the talk very interested, nods and laughs at your jokes. Every time I get a bit nervous, I look at them. I still remember the face of that person for my Full Stack Fest talks. And I believe that was several years ago, which is quite impressive. Cassie also shared, I don't know how to pronounce this, I'm very sorry, I should have asked, propranolol. It's a beta blocker that stops the physical reactions to nerves. You still feel nervous about your body, but your body doesn't betray you. Sweaty palms, shaky knees, tremors in your voice, etc. It is a miracle drug. Also, slow circular breathing, standing very tall to allow air into your lungs, physically shaking out the nerves and telling yourself that you're excited, not nervous. Excitement and nerves are very similar. We're going to touch on this later. When I was messaging Cassie about using this tweet, she also added, she's been recently doing online talks and workshops without propranolol, and she thinks that it's helped her get over the initial hump, but she'd probably still take it if it was on a big stage though. Andy writes, I'm a desperately nervous speaker to the point where I can barely breathe before I go on stage. The thing that gets me on stage is the buzz you get while you're on there. But long term, I'm going to heed Cassie Coates' advice and take some propranolol or calms in the run-up. In terms of getting through it all, my speaker notes are a full script. It means I don't panic having to remember everything, and it really helps me stay on time too. Martin writes, boy, yes, I get nervous. I'm taking every talk seriously, and I don't want to waste anyone's time. I deal with this by going through the story I want to share one more time, and I imagine one person in the crowd going, oh, I didn't know about that. Thanks. And that makes me happy. This resonated with me a lot because it's one of the first pieces of advice I got when writing CFPs. And that is that if you try to imagine the audience, try to imagine that there's at least one person there who's in a position you were in 4 months ago that would have really benefited from the content of this talk. If you get that person to learn something and be like Martin said, I didn't know that, thanks, then you've won. You've succeeded in giving that talk. So let's talk about what happens after the talk, or Q&A. I remember when I gave my first ever talk at a meetup, I was very nervous, and there was this one person at the back of the room who was glaring at me. And when I finished, or I felt was glaring at me, I should say. And when I finished giving that talk, that person kind of asked me a question that it kind of seemed like they'd been queuing it up from the moment I got up on stage. And I didn't know how to answer at it. And this person just got kind of exasperated and annoyed at me. It was a negative experience. And in a way, I'm kind of glad I had it, because now I feel a lot more capable in saying something like, I don't know. That's a great question. Or, hey, I don't know about this, but let's talk about it off stage. Maybe saying something like, hey, if there's anybody in the audience who knows, maybe lift your hand and go talk to them. Saying that you don't have the answer is not only A-okay, but A-awesome. I'm sorry, I didn't. But awesome, you know? Occasionally, it is absolutely fine when, as mentioned earlier today, to say something like, this isn't a question, but more of a statement. When you've got people who really just want to kind of steal the limelight, so to speak. Andrea writes, I don't usually get nervous, and that's because I realize that my talk doesn't need to be perfect. I'm not doing it because I need to add value to my persona and get better job offers. I just like talking and storytelling. I also realize that some people in the audience, maybe a lot of them, will know more than I do. Some will ask tricky questions, and it is okay to tell them you don't know, that you'll research that, and you can get back to them if they want. Once the pressure of giving a perfect talk and knowing all the answers was lifted, there was no reason for being nervous anymore. So here's the thing. Folks will approach you and thank you for your talk. And if you like that, that is absolutely wonderful. Please relish that moment, answer the questions, have a great time. But if you prefer, it is absolutely fine to go back to your hotel room, go off the stream if you're online, and have a cool down period. I realize I'm running a little slow, so I will speed up just a little bit. The last part of my talk is about reframing. And this was my favorite to research. Leon writes, but most importantly, I've learned and accepted that being nervous is just a part of this. And actually a really good and important part. Because if I'm not nervous, it means I don't care. And if I don't care, why even bother? I didn't think, audience between you and me, I did not think of this. Grayson writes something very similar. I get nervous, but I reframe nervous as excited. Ultimately, they're the same emotion. And it's always when I'm waiting to go on stage or go up on the podium, which is really interesting as well. I hadn't thought of that either. Sylvia writes, ultimately though, I've just come to realize that I just get nervous, and that's okay. If it's a topic I want to talk about, the nerves are worth it. Francisca writes, of course I get nervous, but I need and leverage that excitement. It's half the fun. It takes about 1 to 5 minutes to be in the groove. That's when it turns and I'm hyper-focused on the talk. Flow, if you will. If I didn't get nervous, I would feel a lack of respect for the talk. Chris writes, 14 years of being on stage and I get nervous directly before the talk. I use that energy to drive my talk. I get into a, well, here I am here and I might as well do it. Might as well do my best mode. If I ever not get nervous, I'll stop presenting, as that is the day I think I'm more important than my content. Whew. Last quote is from Jill. She writes, I am an experienced speaker and I have spoken to audiences of more than 500. I get nervous once the talk is scheduled before mine has started speaking. I don't really handle it. I practice mindfulness / noting, which means acknowledging the feeling, but not avoiding it. I don't see being nervous as bad. It's just how I feel in the moment. I appreciate this takes a lot of mental agility and training though. So here we are. As you saw, loads of people get nervous. Some don't. For some, it's gotten easier over the years. I definitely feel a lot less nervous than I did when I started, but this gets easier over time. This is advice for myself as well. It's not bad to finish early or a minute too late. I remember I spoke at JSConf US in 2019. Time has no meaning anymore. So yes, 2 years ago. And I had a 40-minute slot and my talk took 17 minutes. Oops. What happened? The schedule had time to relax a little bit. Some folks had an opportunity to hang out in the hallway. It was absolutely not a big deal. You are likely the most focused person on your body language at the time. We know how our body feels. And when it feels out of sorts, my feet are very cold right now. It's okay. And let me say it again, just in case. The audience wants you to succeed. Folks, you've been wonderful. Listen, if you want to get in touch with me and talk some more about this, I am on Twitter at Hola Soy Milk. It is a terrible pun, and I kind of apologize for it. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, and I hope I could help alleviate a little bit of this, and have a wonderful day.